Afternoon, everyone. I see some people trickling in here. We'll give it just another few seconds. Thank you so much for joining. As you trickle in, my name is Farah Momin. I'll introduce myself again in a little bit so you can hear a little bit about who is speaking to you. And on behalf of the Homeland Security Startup Studio team, I'd like to welcome you to Find Your Greatness. And we're really excited to have you join us, take some time out of your day to day. And I know a lot of us are really adjusted to this online meeting world, which usually entails some faceless interactions, but I just want to see I'm seeing your names come in, the real people behind them, and really very much appreciating everyone's energy and time. So for today's session, I know Adobe Connect is not often used by a lot of people, so I want to get everyone situated and comfortable. First, I want to just take note of what you're looking at. So at the top of your screen, you will see the name of the event. You'll see an audio button, which should be green, meaning you can hear me. If you need to mute me at any time, go ahead and press that, and it should go gray, and you can click it again, and it'll go green if you want to hear me again. So make sure your sound is enabled, and don't miss out on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. So you're looking at a series of pods, and on the bottom right, you have a Q&A pod where you can stay in touch with us, ask questions all throughout the event, and we have time designated to answering your questions at the end of the discussion. If for any reason we don't get to your questions, we're more than happy to continue the dialogue beyond today's event. So additionally, when you clicked on your link, you probably joined between either your browser or your downloaded application. So those were the two options you were given, browser, application. If you're facing any tech issues today at any point, we recommend that you click out of whatever you're in, click out of your app if you're using the app, click out of the browser if you're using the browser, and try the alternative. If you're facing those tech issues, we recommend just giving it a whirl and going back to the link you were sent and trying to re-enter using the alternative option. And that should rectify any tech issues on your end. Now, in the event that there's some broader tech issue and we're all kicked off for any reason, always need to have a backup plan. So don't worry, we got you covered. If for any reason we're all kicked off, please stand by for a link in your email to a Microsoft Teams invitation. So we don't anticipate needing to do this, but in the event we're all kicked off for any reason, just wait for an email from us and we'll continue the show on Teams. All right, so Happy New Year, right? So this is hopefully and probably the first event that we're all having in 2021, and through some social media post or email you got, conversation, you heard about this event. Why are we here today? Let's get started and take a look. Let's view the app. So hopefully something there resonated with you, right? And what's the purpose of this event? It's to find your greatness, and let's acknowledge that this is not just a platitude and some words. We're actually making a call to action here. And I want to acknowledge that this has been a difficult year for a lot of people for many reasons. And it's a time that's ripe for change and innovation. And it's really important now, more than ever, that we unlock the goodness in ourselves and each other, and that we nurture the ideas that push us all forward. So for those of you joining, I know some of you are lab scientists and others are, recent MBAs or current students. And some of you are experienced entrepreneurs, while others haven't ever done this before. And you're all welcome here today. We're all brought here together to understand the role that entrepreneurship can play in all of our lives, in our individual journeys, and then more broadly on a societal level. So to accomplish that goal, to find our greatness, we're having a conversation here to understand where we all fit. Ooh, apologies for that. So my name is Farah Momin. I'm the MC for today, and I'll set the stage for the Homeland Security Startup Studio. And we're really lucky to be hosting Bob Burns today, the Executive Director of the OIC from DHS, Science and Technology Directorate. And we'll then have what is sure to be a really fun and interesting conversation with serial entrepreneur Dave Copps and a moderated discussion by Jennifer Ortakales Dawkins from Business Insider. And then lastly, we'll round this out with how this particular program can be that vehicle for finding your greatness, unlocking that potential. And to do that, we're going to hear from people who've actually done it, who've gone through our programs, and they'll give you some information, and we'll give you some information about how you can take your next step. So just so you can see who you're talking to, again, my name is Farah Momin. I am an associate here at FedTech, and we'll tell you what FedTech is very shortly. And I manage this specific program. So this is a Homeland Security Startup Studio. I have a background in startup advisory and social entrepreneurship in both practice and study, and I love approaching my work, whatever that is in any given time, with a spirit of collaboration and constant learning. And that's actually what brought me to FedTech in particular. So let me introduce a little bit about FedTech. What do we do here? So we do a number of things. We're going to start with startup studios, which is the focus of today's conversation. And through the studio, we connect talent and tech and bring new solutions to market. We also run accelerators that support existing startups and their ability to solve real-world problems. We support entrepreneurial approaches within existing organizations. You might have heard of the term entrepreneurship, so that's what we're referring to here. And we also work with corporate ventures, right? We're trying to create an ecosystem where our startups, federal technology, and companies can all intersect and work harmoniously. So that's what FedTech does. And what are we talking about here today, right? So we know that the US government has a wealth of technologies available to the public, unused, ripe for advancement and commercialization. Okay, and so we also know that there are so many people, like many of you on this call, people like myself who have that little itch, wondering, can I start a business? Is this for me? And then we have a wide array of consumers, businesses, governments, nonprofits looking to buy and use solutions to solve their problems. So these are the three components that we're looking at. And if you look at what's in the center, that's where we have the startup studio model. All right, so we're looking to play at the intersection of these, take solutions that are ripe for innovation, connect them with the people who can take it forward and bring them to market. So how do we do that? So again, we work by sourcing technology from labs across the country, finding people who want to be entrepreneurs and explore the potential of these deep tech possibilities. And we at FedTech help you do that with resources, education, and some of these teams go on and find an awesome use case for their tech. They go on to actually start a company and then license that technology from the lab. And then for others, they might not start a company, right? But you can learn so much about the technology, the business, the commercialization process, and the labs also benefit. So even if they don't license the technology, they get to learn about all of this simultaneously and reincorporate those market findings and advance the technology that they have. And we at FedTech also work with the companies that form, and we take them from this theoretical, could I do this, to the real world, to the market, they're doing it. And again, we have some folks here today who will actually share their experience having done that. So the program takes place over approximately 18 weeks. So starting this coming April. So we take the selected entrepreneurs, pair them with technologies and with each other. So you'll meet your teammates. We have a boot camp day where you all meet and receive some fundamentals, get started on your journey. you start thinking through, your use cases, your assumptions, you start testing those assumptions, you talk to potential customers, you apply the art of storytelling to the science that you're working with, and come up with a business pitch. I think you've all seen shows like Shark Tank, right? That's the pitch. That's the place where everything you've been working on comes together in a concise way. There's a competitive aspect to this, so we down select from the initial teams and try to find the best business people who came up with great use cases of their technologies, and they move on to phase 2, where we actually move you forward as companies, right? So what are the goals you should set as a company? How do you go forward in the technical side of building the company, the logistics, the prototyping, raising money? How do you form partnerships? And then we continue refining your storytelling before you go out into the real world and bring your solution to market. And we've been doing this, and it's been working really great. So we work with over 40 partner labs. We've had 150 teams go through our programming, 63 last year alone, and 35 of them have gone on to form actual companies in market. And like a lot of us here, we found a way not only to make this work in the virtual world, but a way to make it work really well. So all of our programming right now is virtual, including our weekly workshops that we use to work with our entrepreneurs, boot camps and pitch days. So we've adapted all of our offerings and the way we bring our communities together to this current reality, bringing people together, breaking down our silos, and creating really robust teams that work with these technologies and take them forward. Right, and we work with partners and labs from all across the country to make this work and get the best technologies, subject matter experts, mentors, and entrepreneurs as well. And while I'm going, I'm seeing some questions here about the slides. So if you're having some technical issues, please do feel free to exit out and then re-enter using the link. That should solve many of your tech challenges. So sometimes you just have to exit and re-enter. Apologies for that. So again, we're working with labs, we're working with technologists, these inventors, some of whom are on this call, and we're glad to have you here. So you get to watch your creations get taken to new horizons. You can work with the teams, track the progress, in some cases license the technology and see the company take it to market. And in other cases, the teams provide valuable information about the tech's use cases. So everyone in this model walks away knowing more about the tech, its market, and knowing more about themselves as people, as professionals. So the goal of this particular studio model, the Homeland Security Startup Studio, is specifically to ID, accelerate, and deliver commercial applications of tech from labs and research centers, and to raise awareness of DHS's mission. And to share more about the program and this exciting partnership, I'd like to give a really warm welcome to Bob Burns, the Executive Director of the Office of Innovation and Collaboration within.
Thank you, Farah. Hopefully I'm connected. You get a little scared when everything is in the virtual world and we have to do it. I'm Bob Burns, Executive Director, one of the Executive Directors at the Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. Happy New Year to all of you. May your 21 be better than your 2020. And I also want to thank you especially for being here today. In a day of consternation across our country, it's more important than ever that we come together, whether it's government, inventor, business, entrepreneur, to look at solving our country's issues and our problems. I especially happy to be here today. So what is S&T a little bit? We're the research and development arm of DHS, where we work to integrate innovative technology into everyday use. Integrate technology into everyday use, really important points. And the results are real-world solutions in realistic timeframes, also an important point. DHS, in essence, though we do customs and is a law enforcement entity. So we're moving quickly. We need solutions quickly, whether it's fighting human trafficking or invasive species coming through borders. We need to look and move quickly. So realistic timeframes are really important to us. Our programs address the most basic of human needs: food security, travel safety, environmental health, emergency search and rescue, protection of your family and mine as we go along. So Along the way, we've grown some innovative practices and more efficient processes to use available resources, which there are never enough of. People, time, money, brains, there's never enough of those. So we have to come up with different ways of doing this. So the Startup Studio is one of those elements that we want to bring to the table, and we really want your participation in everything. I mean, today's innovation is driving new business models. Today's innovation is new levels of production, functions, market trends. Especially at S&T, we've encouraged those new conversations on what it means to be the workforce of the future, to figure things out. I've been doing this a while, and I can tell you that it never ceases to amaze me the next thing that we have to look at, the next technology, the next way of doing business. The world of technology, the world of business, the world of government is so different than when I started today that this concept of innovation, we continually have to look at doing that. So, we need to develop and deepen some strategic relationships. You help me, you help S&T, you help DHS push the boundaries in collaborative research, and we discover and apply some new scale some new solutions. Scaling is also a really important part of our solution set that we're looking at DHS because we have hundreds of thousands of users. And not only do we do for the federal level of DHS, but we do the first responder community, which numbers in the millions across the country. Your local fire chief, your local police association, your local EMTs are all part of that. So in a nutshell, we see you as part of that resource, part of that very valuable resource of, in this case, brains, time, ideas, and working the business model. So how do we want to approach this? Well, overall reality is we want to do something different. We have to do it better, faster, smarter, cheaper. You bring the energy, the outputs, and the solutions. I don't have them. You have them. I need you. Traditional methods of government engagement and contracting, though they have done part of the job, don't do all of it. We weren't connecting with a broader group of performers who could help us deliver. You, basically, the mom and pop shops, the small entrepreneurs, the startups, those 4 people who meet and come up with a brilliant idea, but need to come up with some way to connect it, need someone to help commercialize it, need someone to bring it forward. Our urgent requirements weren't being met quickly enough or creatively enough, or maybe not at all. And I want to go back, those urgent requirements cover the full spectrum of a life in the United States. People might think Homeland Security, okay, TSA airplanes. You also know that we also fight human trafficking. We fight slavery. We fight child exploitation. We do all those things here in the United States, and we truly need your help in doing it. So we've started to work on our relationships and hold events like this one. One end goal. Our end goal is transferring and commercializing technologies from DHS-funded research, because that's what we do, to get solutions into the marketplace for the end users. You're in between the two. We need to fund. We have needs. We need you to go ahead and bring it forward as we do that. So, we've tackled some significant national problems and gained some real lessons learned by working with an array of partners. We've made public buildings more secure. We've made aviation more secure. We've interdicted opioids entering the country illegally. We have worked on COVID-19. We have worked on the international front of COVID-19. And all of those things are about making your and my families less vulnerable, make our country safer, and doing what we need to do. So our programs use our partners' expertise to develop those technologies and then move these solutions into the marketplace. We need you to be part of that mission. Okay. Within INC, which is Innovation and Collaboration, which is my portfolio at Science and Technology, which covers everything from the lab infrastructure for Homeland Security to outreach to industry to working with all of you. Within the Office of Industry Partnerships, which is our host today, along with FedTech, we have programs that offer a wide range of tools and mechanisms for working in industry to develop and deliver innovative solutions for Homeland Security. This is a mouthful. What that really means is there's no one piece that does it all. So we have things for small business. We have traditional contracting methods. We have grants. We work with the academic communities. This piece we're talking about today links to OIP, or the Office of Industry Partnerships, Technology Transfer and Commercialization Branch, which establishes research partnerships and collaborations. These get the innovative technology solutions and other R&D outcomes to Homeland Security operators and the commercial market. Again, big important point. If we don't get it to the commercial market, if there's someone who's not manufacturing it, if I can't buy 500, 1,000, 10,000 units of whatever the item might be. I can't use it. I have to get it commercialized. I have to get it in the marketplace. I have to make it workable as we go forward. So we're here today to kick off one of those partnerships. And as Farah was mentioning, we recently set up a relationship with FedTech, a venture builder and accelerator. Three of my favorite words, venture builder and accelerator. So we're launching our first Homeland Security Startup Studio in partnership with FedTech. This is new to us. This is new to what we are doing. So we're here to learn with you as we move along. We're here to help understand with you as we go along. And our end goal, to figure out those promising technologies from U.S. laboratories, research centers, wherever they may come from, and match them up with entrepreneurs, top-tier entrepreneurs, so we can create new ventures and once again commercialize relevant technologies for DHS use. Once again, if you have an interest, we have a need. You can do everything from hurricane recovery to communication in disasters to being able to help firefighters track their personnel in burning buildings. There is no aspect of our life in the United States that Homeland Security doesn't touch somehow. We're even working on vaccine and some aspects of DHS and S&T for the COVID-19. So if you've got an interest, we've got a need as we go from there. So as Farah said, the Startup Studio is designed to accelerate and deliver those commercial applications of technologies to meet Homeland Security needs. The effort will first focus on S&T funded technologies, which means we bring money to the table, but we eventually want to expand to include other agencies and laboratories. So we're our own incubator. We're starting it with our funds. We're starting it with our annual R&D where we meet the needs of, but we want to use this and then link elsewhere. Why? The same reason. We don't have enough resources. So we want to join forces with Department of Energy. We want to join forces with Department of Defense. We want to join forces with Health and Human Services. All of these entities that actually in many cases have similar needs, and then we can meet and go together. So how does it work? We're going to source technologies that meet certain maturity criteria, initially from S&T and its partner labs, and recruit 2 or 3 entrepreneurs per technology. These teams are going to work hand in hand with lab scientists, innovators, and inventors and explore forming companies to commercialize those technologies. You know, I'll tell you a story. One of my greatest successes is also one of my greatest failures. We created a fantastic technology. It was used in Washington, D.C. It was state-of-the-art. It was doing things that we now do commonplace in the digital age, but this is 12, 15 years ago. But we didn't think about the commercialization side. So to install it, I needed 7 PhDs. And when we installed it, we broke it and had to fix it again that night. And then the price point was so expensive, we couldn't afford to manufacture it, nor could anyone afford to buy it. So one of my greatest technical successes was also one of my greatest failures. That's the commercialization aspect that we have to fix, and that is why I need you. So with you, we're going to build foundational entrepreneurial knowledge and skill sets for teams to quickly look for potential DHS tools and use cases to go with it, and build the startups and the spin-offs, the companies, so they can successfully license technology and directly impact the security posture of the U.S. Once again, security posture of the U.S., food safety, animal safety, vaccine work, FEMA, hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, firefighters, EMTs. It is not just aviation security. We touch it all, ladies and gentlemen, and we need you as we go forward. So we're looking for your active participation among our labs and our researchers to ensure that we get a broad range of technologies, and then we can make the best approach as we started. So what are we looking for? Innovation, probably an overused word. Sorry, everyone. But something I want to talk about, innovation is also a contact sport. It is not just a nice buzzword. So what do I want you to do when you go back to your offices, or go back to your hometowns, or go back to your living room if you're like me in another part of your house? I want you to speak with us. I want you to speak with each other. And I want you to speak with your colleagues in other agencies, in other companies, in other areas. What are they doing to succeed and overcome the obstacles? What's your goal? I want you to brainstorm ideas. I want you to look at the constraints. I want you to look at the risk. Risk management is really, really important. How much risk do we take in development? How much risk do we take in use? How much risk are you willing to take in the development of commercialization of the technology? How much are we? What's our time frame, and what can be realistically done in that time frame? Doesn't mean we don't want to do it all, but what piece can we get done in the 6 months, in the 12 months? Help drive that conversation about what can be done differently. I need you to work with us, and I need you to work with each other, and I want you to challenge us in the conversations with my team, in the conversations with other governments, in the conversations with each other, and in the conversation with yourself. Challenge yourself, because we're never going to get there if we don't. We will all, I know I want to fall back to the normal way of doing things. I have my safety zone, my secure, I'm comfortable. Push me out of my comfort zone. Push me into a new way of doing business. And take it with us further. I mean, really, it is about pushing that, pushing the line further and further along as we get there. We really don't know what's next, technology-wise. We really don't know what's next, what the need is. Help us get there. Like I said, you know, get out of your comfort zone. It's not easy. It's necessary, but it's not easy. I know, I like my comfort zone. The other ways, so this is about doing something different and something new. Now, another aspect. So you set up entrepreneurship, you work a company. None of these things are going to work on their own. As useful as these technologies might be, as useful as these ideas might be, as useful as the program might be, they're not going to run themselves. So when you get done, when you get things moving, remember you need to get things done through people. Innovation takes a team plus a solid organizational structure for sharing, reporting, and guiding, plus an environment which fosters innovative and collaborative ideas and is willing to take risk. That's a tough one. We're the government. We're not always great on willing to take risk. I need you to push me and challenge me and push me and challenge my people. And it's about common values. We're all in this to make things better. We're all in this to figure out what the needs are. I contacted my staff yesterday. It's about making my community, my family, my neighborhood, my country safer. To taking us to the next level of what we can do. I need you to have a passion for the mission of Homeland Security. I need you to be professionally curious, really drive yourself, and I encourage you to question and to connect the dots and bring it all together. Really important. So regardless of the interest you represent, you all need to hear from each other about what worked, what didn't, celebrate your successes, learn from your failures, and failure is not a bad word when you learn from it. If you've never had a failure, you haven't taken enough risk. If all you've ever had is failures, maybe you took too many. But you've got to try and push yourself. We encourage these conversations, and we're here to listen and support your growth. On the screen, you will see an email address that can be reached. If you ever have a question for me, you can reach it, and my staff will get it to me. Or you have questions for our overall team, or as we go forward with everything we're doing. We're INC, the commercialization shop, and we're open for business. And my question is, not only what can we do for you today, but what can we do together? Thank you, and back to you, Farah.
Thank you so much. A big thanks to Bob Burns today, and I think you hit the nail on the head in many ways, right? And depending on who you are and you know who's listening in here today, parts of these comments might have scared you. Parts of these comments might have excited you. We're not going to shy away from the reality that it can be uncomfortable to do something new like this. As someone who's worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and I've gone out and tried things on my own, I know firsthand it can be very daunting. And when we hear these words, we might oscillate between extreme confidence and fear of the unknown. But today, we want to know what happens if you try. And to take us through that discussion, we're so excited to welcome to the stage Dave Kops, a serial entrepreneur and founder of Worlds.io, which is a company that leverages AI for novel forms of spatial modeling, casual. I'd also like to welcome Jennifer Ortakales Dawkins, who covers the entrepreneurship beat for Business Insider. So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you, give you the stage, let you introduce yourself a little bit further, and get talking.
Awesome. Thank you, Farah. Hi, Dave. How's it going?
Great. How are you, Jennifer?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having us, and thanks, Dave, for coming on for this chat. I'm very excited. First, just tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a small business and entrepreneurship reporter at Business Insider, and I focus a lot of my work on how businesses can launch, fund, scale, and become successful in the first years of starting up. Dave, is there anything you would like to add about yourself before we get started?
Oh, let's see. I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur. I guess I have the sickness, I think I've raised over $40 million and built and sold 2 companies. Worlds is my third. So I'm currently CEO there at Worlds.io. We're a spatial AI company, the software platform that enables companies to see and sense their worlds through AI. But I guess over the years, I've put machine learning and AI into hundreds of companies around the world. Had 2 exits. The most recent exit was a company called BrainSpace that we acquired as a part of a $2.8 billion roll-up.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's get started. So first of all, tell us how you got into entrepreneurship. Was it something that you always wanted to do?
I think, I'm one of those persons that I don't think I had a choice. I think it was just kind of who I was at my core. Even in college, I quit school after my second year. I finished eventually, but it took like 7 years for me to finish college because I kept stopping and starting businesses. So I started 2 businesses during my college career, so I think it's just in my blood. I think I love the act of creation. Taking a blank sheet of paper and turning it into a beautiful work of art, doing that with people, like amazing people, like what's possible for teams to do together. And I think it's just it was just kind of an innate thing for me. I don't know that I had a choice.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, what would you tell aspiring entrepreneurs? What do they need to know? How does someone find out whether they'll make a good entrepreneur or not from the beginning?
Yeah, I think, that's an interesting question because I think there's a myth out there that entrepreneurs are born. I don't believe that. I think you can learn to be a great entrepreneur. And a lot of it is, for me, just to put it bluntly, I think learning what you suck at, right? So what are you not good at? And don't spend too much time doing that, and work on the things, or focus on the things that you're really good at. I'm a person that I love envisioning technology in a company and the things that can provide for the world. I love doing that. I love engaging people in doing that. But where I fall short is on like operations. I'm a terrible operations person, so I've learned after a while, after trying for years to be better at operations, and I learned, no, you hire someone that's really good at that. And so for me, that's it. It's just to focus on your greatness. I love the theme of this talk. Great. Maybe we'll talk about later, but greatness is something that I just it's kind of rings close to my heart. But I think that we all have greatness inside of us. It's just sometimes we're not inspired to pull it out.
Yeah, definitely. And so you mentioned to me a couple days ago that you're really interested in the battle between the ears. So tell us what that means.
Yeah, it's about mindset, right? I think mindset, unfortunately, is being overused right now. It's something I've been talking about for years. Now it's kind of a trending thing. But mindset, your mindset is really important. I think before, as an entrepreneur, we don't have the money, people, and market presence of larger companies. So we have to kind of create our unfair advantage, our superpowers. And one of those is your mindset. So as a leader of a startup, it's up to you to vividly create futures, and make them real for other people. So from there, we enroll people in the possibility of making futures real. This extends beyond customers, goes to investors and team members and things like that. But what lies underneath all of that, the storytelling, is your mindset. So entrepreneurs can't be linear thinkers. We can't. Great entrepreneurs come from what's possible, like exponential thinking. And so we've got to develop this kind of exponential mindset. So not building businesses in a present that we inherited from the past, but rather build a present that we borrow from the future. Like, what can I see and how can I make that real? Pull that into the present. So I kind of look at it like a linear mindset would be, you hear it all the time, make it 10% better. An exponential mindset might be, it's 10x or nothing, lead the market. Well, what about creating a market of one? That's a different mindset. How can I create our product or our service or whatever we're building together? How can we create that so there isn't a direct competitor? What can we do that's so unique it puts us as a market of one? That's an exponential mindset, and quickly reacting to the market. You always hear that, we react quickly to the market. Well, what if what you were creating and the way you're pushing it to market forced everyone to react to you? Why not be a creator, and that's an exponential mindset. So I think those are things. Looking at risk, Bob talked about it today, a linear thinker looks at risk as something you avoid. An entrepreneur, an exponential entrepreneur looks at risk like fuel, right? It's what we do that keeps us alive, right? Risk is an important part of our business. We have to take risks. If we're not taking risks, we're not moving forward. So things like that, I think, it's critical that you win the war between your ears before you go out in the market and try and change things.
Yeah, that's great. And I love what you said about risk, because that actually is a really good point to lead into my next question for you. So, let's say a person wants to be an entrepreneur. They know that they want to be an entrepreneur, but they're not really sure if it's worth the career or financial or even personal risks. What would you tell them?
Yeah. It's a great question. I actually get that a lot. When I do a talk somewhere, a lot of times someone will come up to me and say, I think I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not sure. And it's because it sounds too risky, right? I would kind of throw back at you that there's risk in everything you do. I mean, when you're working for another company, the risk is that that company won't work and you're not driving the ship, right? They're putting the ships into the rocks. With an entrepreneur, it's your ship and they're your rocks, so you can affect what's happening. So in a smaller company, being a part of a startup or something like that, I do think, when you build great teams and great teams work well together, I like to talk about culture a lot, you remove risk, but I think it's not accurate to say that there's no risk in big business. I mean, there's several risks, and some of the risks extend beyond, like, do I have a job or not? One risk is, are you growing as a person? Are you satisfied with sitting in the same seat every day and not growing? If you are, then yeah, go work at a big company, but there's risk of not growing, and I think what keeps us alive as people is growth. We're always moving, and always learning and always creating. And I think you have more opportunities for that in smaller companies. You have more of an opportunity to create things. You have more of an opportunity to contribute meaningfully, like what you do actually matters. And that gives you some control over your success. So I actually think you have more control over your success inside of a startup than you do in a large company.
That's great. And so kind of tying those things together, how would you, put together the mindset aspect you mentioned and then the risk aspect? How can someone who wants to be an entrepreneur get over that, the barrier and cost to entry of starting a business?
Yeah, I think there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur than there is now. And this conference is an excellent example of that. FedTech didn't exist when I started doing businesses. There weren't resources like this. There weren't people that were looking for your greatness, that were encouraging you to jump in, and even trying to match you with technologies that could make a difference. Like, here's some technology. What can you do with it? How can you help me solve problems with that? So looking for that. And then the incubators, so Capital Factory is one that I'm involved with pretty deeply. I love Capital Factory, but there's lots of other incubators all over the country. So there's lots of places you can get involved in entrepreneurship. And I encourage you to just learn more about it. But think of it this way. Don't look at entrepreneurship as this large, don't eat the elephant in one bite. What is it that you're passionate about? And how can you learn more about that? So is there a person, is there a company that's doing something that you really like? Call that person up, call them up and say, hey, you're doing something that is amazing. And I want to talk to you about it. You'll be amazed at how many people will talk with you. I do that all the time. I mentor kids in high school and college sometimes. I don't do it very often, but now I'll take one or two people a year and just kind of help them out. Because they called me. He called me and asked me, so I think it's not about using entrepreneurship as this mechanism. That's not it. It's about, what are you passionate about? And are you passionate enough about that thing to go do something about it, to go innovate in that field? And if you are, start building what I call your Whoville. The biggest mistakes I see with entrepreneurs, and maybe what keeps you from starting, is that we focus on the how. You start focusing on how. How should be none of your business initially. It should be who. Who can I build your Whoville? Who can I talk to that is doing something I find interesting? How can I learn more about that? And then, I've never started a business before. Who could I call that's done that before? Or what program could I get involved in? Can I go join Capital Factory, another incubator and accelerator? And can I go to their events, and listen to entrepreneurs talk about how they did it? Just become very interested in what you're doing, and don't look at it like there's this big mechanism I have to learn before I can be an entrepreneur. No, be led by passion. What do you want to do? What are you committed to making a difference in? And then do that and start asking people and building that Whoville, all these people that can help you put all the pieces in place to get there.
Yeah, what was something that helped you build your Whoville? Whether that was finding the right team of people or, gaining the right connections within your industry. Do you have any little tidbits of tips for anyone trying to figure out how they do that?
Yeah, I think I'm a person that loves to talk about these kinds of things, especially entrepreneurship and future of AI and things like that. So I actually get online and I create a pretty good social awareness, So I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and I don't do Facebook so much anymore, but things like that. And I'm passionate about kind of talking about things and engaging in conversations with people out there. So I think if you want to start, getting into an area, you want to connect with the people that are doing those things now. So how do you do that? Well, go on Twitter and type in, whatever you're interested in, just see who pops up and see who's saying the things that you like, follow them. You could even create a new Twitter feed, that's only on following that, and same thing, Instagram, whatever, just find people that are talking about, and podcasts are fantastic. My thing is I love podcasts, probably my favorite thing to listen and learn from, but it's hard to get all the time. So I try to dedicate a couple hours a week to listen to a couple podcasts, but that's another great way to find thinkers, I think you want to just connect with people. So there's real power in connection. It's one thing if you're a single person sitting with your headphones on and looking at the web, that's not going to do anything. You've got to get out in the world. You've got to talk to people, understand who's making a difference in the area you like. Ping them online, ping them, whatever, however you can contact them and just say, that's awesome what you're doing. Can I learn more about that? There's no intention for me to call. I'm not selling you anything. Can you tell me more about what you're doing? I'm fascinated with that, and getting to understand the network of people who are doing those things in the market and becoming a part of that network, right? You become a part of a network by not just asking for things, but giving back. How can I help a person? How can I lift them up? Support a tweet they did and retweet it and say, what an amazing thing this person said, things like that, but become a part of that community, part of that network.
Awesome. Yeah. And so you also mentioned to me that you have a little story about funding and a rental car. Tell us about that one.
I'll start the story by saying I do not recommend this, but I think it's kind of an example of this, of persistence. I think, to me, I think persistence is omnipotence. If you're persistent and you never stop pushing what you're doing, you will be successful. So let me sugarcoat it with that on the front. So I was funding my second company. My first one hadn't succeeded yet, but I left. There's a kind of a conflict between me and my partner. I kept all my shares and everything, but I left and I started this new company. And it was one of those situations where I put everything I had into it. I put in 401k, everything I had. My credit cards were full when that first started. I put everything I had into it. I went all in, And so I was at this point where I was literally broke. I borrowed all the money from my family I could, and I was trying to get this new company going. And I went up to fund it. So I flew up, and before I flew up, my credit card apparently didn't work on the ticket. And I got there and they said, oh, do you have another form of payment? And I had cash with me because that's all I really had. And so I paid for the rest of the ticket with my cash. So now I was really broke. I went on this investor meeting with no money in my pocket, no credit cards that worked. It was terrible, right? I get there and I get my rental car to go to the meeting and I realize this card's not going to work, right? And so I had a car, where I was a member of a program where you can just get in the car and drive out. And I got to the gate, handed him my driver's license and card. He said, oh, your card's not working. I was like, oh, well, that's strange. Well, when I drive around and he goes, okay. And he opens the gate. I took off from my meeting. So I was a rental car fugitive for, about 6 hours. I'm in the meeting, standing up, talking to investors, and my phone's ringing off the hook. It's the rental car coming on. Hey, why'd you take our car? And long story short, though, I brought it back 6 hours later, and I pitched to 14 people that day and got investment from 12. And then the great ending of the story was I wasn't a fugitive. I did give the car back. But when I funded that business, literally 3 months later, my first startup sold. I actually helped sell it. And so I went from, pauper to prince overnight. So but it's persistence, right? You never give up. The moment I'll kind of never forget is my wife looking at me when our whole life's falling apart, right? She's like, why aren't you freaking out? And I told her, if I put attention on freaking out, that attention is not being put on figuring it out. And right now, 100% of my attention is figuring it out. And, but those moments, have stuff like that. Maybe not that extreme, but you'll have moments like that, but just never give up. If you're passionate about it, make it a commitment in your life that that's what you're going to be and that's who you're going to be, and go do it, whatever it takes.
That's great. Yeah. And, I think that it's interesting in entrepreneurship, the world loves to talk about the success stories and, understandably so, because as a business owner, you want to be successful. Mm-hmm. But I think, a lot of times it's also the failures that really help us learn the best lessons and mm-hmm. that teach us the most. So what was one of the most profound failures that you've had in your career, and how did you learn from it?
So my answer is something that some people don't like, but I've never failed. And let me tell you why I say that. Have I done things that didn't work? Absolutely. A lot. But I developed this mindset that failure is a myth. And I really mean this. I believe it. These aren't just words, right? When you think about failure is a judgment. All there is in the world and all there is in your business is what happens and what you choose to do next, right? So somebody else's judgment on something that happened should be of no concern to you. Dramatizing failure, all that does is place a negative label on something that happened. All there is in the world is what happens and what you choose to do next. I got challenged on this in a talk once from an engineer. He said, well, of course failure exists in the world. I said, give me an example. He said, okay, well, herd of elephants, and then there's a lion that challenges him and he kills one of the elephants. That elephant failed. And I said, okay, well, my interpretation of that is that elephant was a hero. Same thing, something happened, two different interpretations, right? And so in my companies, there is no failure. All there is what happens and what you choose to do next. And by removing that judgment, the focus moves to learning from your experience and what's now possible to change, improve, or reinvent, right? I've had things that didn't work, but when something doesn't work, the choice is, do I keep doing it? Do I choose to move on and do something else? Do I choose to learn from this? Notice I didn't say it failed, because if I said that, there's no next thing to do. It just failed, so you kill it. Right? That's not the way the world works. The world works is that things happen, and now you have choices. You can do something, you can choose to stop, all those things. So in our companies, we recast failure as iteration, right? So if there's no failure, what is there? Well, there's iteration. Failure is a judgment and a commitment to stopping, where iteration is a commitment to mission. It's about relearning and reinventing and rebuilding until you reach awesome, right? So you iterate until you reach awesome. So by the way, I think iteration is more of a reflection of what's in our culture than failure, right? Think about gaming. If anybody does gaming, you don't die anymore. You just spawn. You spawn a new person and you learn from your mistakes and you go forward, right? You keep spawning new people. And so I think it's a more accurate reflection. So in our startups, commitment to iteration shifts our focus to continually improving in a way from stop, judge, and maybe not restart, right? It's iterate until you reach awesome.
I love that. Yeah. And so back to success, right? Again, there's a lot of different interpretations of what mm-hmm. success can be. For some business owners, they want to actually sell their company. For some, it's just raising, a really great round of funding. For others, it might be a long-term pursuit of actually, mm-hmm. Building up a brand and a company. So what is success to you, both personally and just in general? Like, what would you advise other entrepreneurs seeing success as for their own companies?
Yeah, I think my answer to that question has changed, in the last few years. Like any entrepreneur, I wanted to get into the things to kind of create some value and sell a company and all those great things you hear about, the stories you hear about. And I've actually done that twice. But I think, what I've learned over the years is that, the reason that I create companies now, the product of what we create as a product is not really the focus. That's the result of what's really important, which is culture and people. Like, I love creating an environment where people can be whatever they want to be and can do things that they couldn't do somewhere else. And so we can achieve, incredible, unreasonable things together. Like that environment is what I try to create. We call the culture an Ubuntu culture. It's actually a Swahili word that if you, there's no direct English translation, but loosely translated, it means I am who I am because of who we are together. So in my companies, when the culture, and I do a culture talk, by the way, if you come in our company, you're going to sit with me and whoever else is new in the company for 3 hours and talk about culture, And what I tell them is that when you come in here, it's not about you stepping over people to be great. Like, I don't care about people like that. We have a no diva policy. I want someone that comes in and the first thing you do is you look around you and ask yourself, who am I for these other people? How can I lift them up? And if you lift them up, you will be successful. That's how you become successful here. And that kind of culture, has really changed how I feel about why I do things. Like, to me, it's not about, the actual product you're building as opposed to like what's possible for this group of people together, and let's make this an experiment. How great can we be together,
Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Dave. I'm just jumping in here into your discussion, very rudely interrupting to surface some of the questions that are coming through. Audience, please feel free to throw in some questions in the Q&A pod. So again, that's bottom right pod of your screen. You should have the option. We have a question from Kaushik. Can you share a bit about what to expect in the first year of a journey when you have little funding and are just getting started? So if you can just talk about that crazy period in the beginning when you don't feel like you have money and you're just getting started. Dave, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, sure. This is it's a critical part of any startup. And I'll tell you, as you do them, like you do your first one, you have success there, that part of the second startup is a lot easier. And now I'm on the third one. To give you the example, like we raised this money for my new company without a product. I put a kind of PowerPoint presentation, said I've got the band back together. We want to do something great. Here's what we want to do. And we raised $10 million. I couldn't do that 2 companies ago. So it does get easier. I'm going to tell you that right now. The hardest one is your first one, right? When you don't have a track record, and you have to still go out there and you still have to stand in front of investors and you still have to raise money. And so I kind of tell people there's a couple things. So one is that, try to create as much as you possibly can before you ask for money. There's several reasons for that. The more the product that you have in your first startup, the more you can demonstrate the value. If you can go so far as to get your first customer and show that progress, even better, right? The more you can do before you ask for money in your first startup, the better. So if you can find those 2 or 3 people who want to get together and do nights and weekends and create something together, that's the best way to do it. I'm not in favor of new startups going out and trying to raise a bunch of money to build a company. I think you don't know enough right now to do that, and it can be disastrous, and it's not fair to investors, right? So get out there and find the people and create as much as you can. We call it a minimum viable product, an MVP, right? So I want to create something that can at least demonstrate the value, because what that does for you, the team, not the investors, is it actually shows you what your real product's going to be. I like to tell people that you have this idea of what you're going to be with what your product's going to be and who your company's going to be. And when it's your first startup and you push it out there, I'll almost guarantee you it won't be that. You have to be nimble and you have to listen to the market. When you push something out there and no one's clicking on that button you thought was the button that's going to make your product go to the moon, well, why not? So you call people and say, why didn't you click on that button? Why don't you I'm being trivial, but why didn't you like this? Why didn't you buy it? Right. And you find that things out and you pivot. It's that build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, until you finally get to that product that that's people who are willing to pay money for, right? Fair market value. What's a willing buyer and a willing seller? Where can they meet? Right. So you want to prove out a couple things. Just think about this in your startup. So you want to not only prove out your product, that you have something that people are willing to pay money for, but you also want to prove your business model. How am I selling it? So are you selling through channels? Are you selling direct to consumer? Are you B2B? And you want to prove that out to at least one customer, right? Find that first customer that can find crazy value in what you're building, and get them as ideally an investor. I've done that before too. A great way to start funding a company if you've never funded one before, is to solve a problem at a large company and then go after their VC group and say, hey, look what I've done. How would you like to become our first investor? What I like about strategic investors is that they now have a vested interest in your success, right? So they want you to be successful. So they'll do things for you and with you that they wouldn't do if they were just a client. So that's another kind of thing is that. But in your first one, it's hard. I'm not gonna blow smoke. It's hard, so you've got to kind of be unreasonable with yourself. So what can I create that someone will pay for, that can improve my business model, can improve my product, and then can I go try and get an investment from someone that would care about that, or friends and family, whatever you can do.
Thanks, Dave. I actually have a
advice.
question for both of you. And before I do that, I see some more comments coming in. Just a reminder, there's some speaker information on the bottom left. So if you want to learn more about Dave, Jennifer, get in touch with them. I'm seeing some requests for that. So please do find that information on the bottom left here. And question for both of you. Jennifer, I'll start with you. I mean, you're both storytellers in some form. And I'm wondering, how do you find confidence and build confidence and sharing your voice? So in journalism and in entrepreneurship, these are often crowded spaces, a lot of people trying to make their mark, and it can be hard to find that confidence. So I'm just wondering, maybe on a more personal note or professionally, like how did you build that? Do you have any advice on that piece? And Jennifer, I'll start with you. Dave, we'll close out with your comment.
Awesome. Yeah. So I would say the first thing for me would really be finding what you're good at, and knowing your strengths, understanding what you have to give and offer, whether you're working for a company or you want to start your own company, or you're somewhere in between, maybe you're side hustling while also working somewhere. But above all, just finding out what are you good at, how can you contribute to a team in a really valuable way. And if it's sort of, if you're starting a business from that, then it's how are you contributing to customers or clients or whoever you're creating this business for. So yeah, that's, I think the main point for me is really just finding your strengths and then running with that, seeing how you can develop them, improving them every single day, trying to get better at it every day, and then realizing that you're only going to give as much as you believe in yourself. So people are going to see that, and they're going to gravitate towards what you are confident in within yourself. And I think also just really making sure that you're being of service. I think that's one of the best ways to stand out in any industry, is when you are, not just doing it for yourself, but you're also trying to help other people, whether that's your boss or your manager, or the current company you work at, or the team member that you want to maybe start a business with. I think that there's just such value in setting yourself up as someone who wants to be there, because you'll be there along the journey, and then eventually you might actually be the person that someone else is helping. So yeah.
Yeah. I just would pile onto that. So that's all fantastic. I think, who we are as entrepreneurs are storytellers. I just think that's who we are. And I don't mean storytellers like telling a story like that's not true. I mean, it's what Jennifer just said, is that you're telling a story, you're telling about your product or about your team or about your company in a way that's really relatable to people. So you learn to tell stories that inspire people to want to be a part of your company, or as an investor, as a team member, as a client. The stories aren't typically about how. They're more about why this is important, why this is so great, why we're a great company, and what if. We had our sales meeting today, our beginning of year sales meeting, and we talked about what's our what if, what if we could do this for you? Wouldn't that be awesome? Well, yeah, of course. And so I think I love Gaping Void. If you guys see that vlog, and I think there's a card there once that said, you must touch the heart to move the mind, and I think that's a great way to think about being a storyteller, is that what I see the mistake that entrepreneurs make is they focus on how something works, and they spend time with people explaining how something works. Explaining is not storytelling. If I'm an entrepreneur, what I need to get across to somebody is why this is valuable to them, why they should be really interested in what I'm about to say.
Really appreciate all the stories, the insight, the advice. Why we're the people to do it. And I know it requires some vulnerability to share, not only just your highs, but also some of the lows, all the in between.
It's how you say it,
Jennifer, thank you for sharing your expertise. I know you speak with a lot of entrepreneurs, so bringing that to people today, really valuable. So thank you both. And again, just a reminder, we have the speaker information here. So bottom, middle pod right now, you should see LinkedIn's, websites, etc. Stay in touch with both of them, follow their incredible work. And, we're looking forward to seeing, what impact this conversation makes on people. Sometimes you hear something and then 5 years later, it triggers something. And I've been in that situation before. So I want to just circle back to why we're all here today, right? So there's a risk here. We've all covered it. This is a scary thing. And we're talking about taking the leap, trusting yourself and your ability to navigate the unknown, and figuring out the best avenue to do that. So through our model, again, we find technology, we pair them with aspiring entrepreneurs. And then we figure out, if there's a bit of that magic there, can we take something that exists and people who are willing to explore it, find the use cases. And, this is all good and well when I'm talking about it, but it's kind of hard to grasp, right? So I shared with you earlier this explanation. We find tech, we find people, we help you make it happen, and then maybe you can license the tech. So rather than talking about this on a theoretical level, let's talk about someone who's done it, a company that has actually formed from the startup studios. This is Direct Kinetic Solutions. They have an innovative battery solution lasting far beyond market offerings. So that's the on-paper version, and people who can do a far better job of explaining what they do are here today. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Eki Muniategi and Mark Litz. So let's just get set up here on the AV side. So Mark and Eki, if we can welcome you to the stage here, that would be great. And I'll hop off stage just so everyone can see you. And I have some questions to just get the discussion started. But a quick reminder to the audience, again, please Q&A, ask questions. We'll do our best to get through all or most of them, but in the event we don't, let's continue the discussion. So Eki, while you're on and while Mark's getting acquainted, why did you first decide to join the startup studio?
Hi, Farah. Thanks for the kind words and for the intro. Hi, Farah. Thanks for the kind words and for the intro. For me, it was just a fantastic opportunity. It was too hard to pass. One of the biggest challenges, I think, with starting a company is getting that idea that you can get behind and make a reality. And just the fact that the program pairs you up with the concepts that have not only been ideated, but actually worked upon and developed to some degree. And you get the opportunity to pick brilliant minds like Mark, who is actually my inventor, and run with their baby and make it grow. I think it's unparalleled. It's just fantastic. That's what drew me to it.
Great. And Mark, same question for you. I mean, this is kind of a unique model here. What drew you to it? Why did you decide to participate?
Well, I wanted to participate because I'll just say I bought into the story that I was told that the DoD has a lot of interesting intellectual property, and not all of it migrates out of the laboratory and up through, in my case, up through the Army ranks and engineering centers in the classic way. Sometimes it takes a small startup to say, hey, I have a different idea for this. that I hadn't thought of, and for this technology, and how can I get that started? How can I take a seed there and use it in a different way? And so it's always good to include alternative ways of paths and alternative ways of thinking to get ideas out there. And the DoD recognizes this and says, hey, look, not everything just floats up through the classic lab to engineering to battlefield. There are other ways for this to happen. And Eki wandered along with his two other members of his cohort, and we just. I was fascinated with the technology. They were fascinated with the capabilities, and it seems to have worked. There's no real firm recipe for this.
Yeah, exactly. No recipe indeed. And on that note, I mean, let's look at your backgrounds here. You come from pretty different backgrounds, and I'd love to understand a little bit about what you first thought when you first interacted, coming from these different worlds, trying to build something together, work together. Can you tell me a little bit about that initial experience and how your working relationship has evolved over time? And
Absolutely. So I'm a very direct, open kind of person. So to me, when I met Mark, the first thing was very important to tell him what I wanted to do and why I was there. And some people, when we went on the cohort, which was in 2019, I knew that some people thought about it as an academic opportunity, something to do while pursuing their MBA, or just a new challenge. For us, it was all about getting the technology out and actually starting the business. And I think that setting that goal of what you want the program to be right from the start is critical. Because if the team is on board on it just being a new challenge or a learning experience to enhance your academic performance or work, it's great. But if you all want to work on making it a company, then you're all going to work to that goal. And when I got with the team the first time, everyone had that goal in mind, including Mark. And Mark's comment was, hey, I have developed a lot of technology. I have developed a lot of research. I have never seen it become a commercial product. So this is cool. This is interesting for me, and I would love to participate on it. And at that moment, I knew that our incentives were aligned. And at least for the beginning, I knew that we could actually progress and do something good with it. And that's my take, Mark. I'll take you to it.
yeah, Mark, what love your...
What was the specific question you had asked?
So the question is around when you first met, coming from these very different worlds. What was that experience like when you first met, and then how has your working relationship evolved over time, coming from these different worlds?
Well, we were kind of all thrown together. We had never met before a weekend of seminars where it was explained to us how this asymmetric path of getting technology out into the world other than the classic way. And we were just all thrown together and through a series of, exercises of not only getting to know each other, but recognizing clearly the different approaches that needed to be melded here. Again, me coming from technology and Eki coming from the business side of it, how these two separate paths needed to overlap to make a successful story, as the previous talker was just speaker was just talking about. You got to have a good story about how it can be used. And truthfully, I recognized from the very beginning anyway, my purpose there was to inspire Eki and Joanna and Isabella with the fascination for the technology, and let their own minds take it from there in terms of what else they thought it could be used for and what they envisioned for it. So we were both telling each other sort of tales of what I thought I had, and Eki was thinking about alternate ways to use it. And so starting from the first weekend of just getting together and spending 2 days, 2 days, a Saturday and a Sunday in joint seminars. After that, I never actually saw them again. We've all been doing this over the phone. This was before the pandemic. We've been getting, because Ecky's in El Paso and Isabella's in Vancouver and Joanna's in New York and I'm in DC. So we developed, I guess our own little nervous system there to be able to continue talking and sharing ideas.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. And kind of following up on that thread, looking at your backgrounds, I'll start with you, Ecky. I mean, you have a background in business and product. What was the most valuable takeaway from the Startup Studio? What did you learn that was new and different and challenging for you? And if you can explain kind of that value proposition of the program.
Sure. So I'm going to echo Dave as well. The whole switching mentality of it's not about explaining how it works. It's about explaining how it's valuable for me and uncovering that value. So I'm a sales guy. I have been passionate about sales for a long time, and I worked on different aspects of sales, on crafting the back end, on actually doing the sales myself. And to me, it's amazing how no one thinks about selling on the early stages. And the program showed me that it is the most critical thing. It's you might have the best concept ever, but if you don't uncover that customer need and you make it clear that you can solve it and in an easy way to communicate so that that particular person can talk to his or her partner and communicate it too, and then you get a consensus, it doesn't happen. And to me, that's what that I really enjoyed about the program, the fact that it was very customer-centric. So you have the technology, worry about the customer, talk to different customers, prove your hypothesis wrong, and then once you prove the one that's right and you can tackle and maybe get some value off of it, then go into that one and go back to the inventor and ask him for the requirements. And is this a use case? Can you make this happen? Could someone engineer this into a reality, yes or not? But at that point, when you're asking those questions, you know that if the answer is yes, you have a potential customer, which means that everything is going to be easier. The fundraise is going to be easier. The actual sales is going to be easier. And finding your fellow travelers, like I call them, or basically the people in your ecosystem that make your technology and devices happen, they will jump with you if they know that there's an end in mind. If you just think that you have something cool and over-explain it and just get enamored with the technology, but not with how you can use it, then it's going nowhere. And to me, that was a big thing, the fact that it is customer-centric.
Yeah, I love your comment about, sometimes things fall into place and things start, just kind of coming together, but what about when it doesn't? And I'd love to talk a little bit about the challenges. Mark, starting with you, this is, again, kind of a unique model. What was difficult about this experience, and how did you navigate?
The challenges are that in my job, I'm supposed to perform research, and I do, and I love that part of it. But not all of the efforts that are required to, but we're really not focused on transitioning quickly. We're really focused on we have unique capabilities at our laboratory. We have special tools and special facilities, and they really do want to use it for research. So transitioning quickly isn't the primary concern, whereas clearly in a business that in a startup business, that's more important. So the application side of things, more of the engineering. I care more about, for instance, the materials and their interactions and how to match these materials. Whereas that's not what Ecky needs. He needs to build off of that understanding and be able to engineer some results and prototypes quickly that can then be perhaps transitioned into volume manufacturing, should it come to that in the future. So the challenges are we both have the same sort of interest in mind, but I have a certain set of tools and realities and constraints I have to live under, and Eki has a separate set of constraints that are, somewhat related to where to get capital to do these things that I don't have the the real authority to approve. But because we each appreciate each other's interests and capabilities, we just keep working to try to support each other's interests and recognize that we're both that the gain of one really supports the gain of the other. So we try to keep that in mind, I think.
And Eki, I see you both smiling, so I have a feeling there were a lot of conversations around this. And I'm going to pose the same question to you, Eki. Before I do that, I just want to remind everyone to please go ahead and ask questions. So our team is answering questions in the Q&A pod. Also, you can direct a question at Eki and at Mark, and I'll go ahead and read those out as they come in. But while those come in, Eki, same question to you. What was hard about this, and how did you know?
So I think that the hardest thing is always going to be human interactions, right? So you just have to be prepared for that. You have to know that there's going to be different mentalities in the team, different ways of thinking about it, different approaches and priorities. So you have to be ready for that. We, since the beginning, established a voting system. It was 3 of us, so majority rules, and whoever got voted out, it's one of those where disagree and commit. It's okay, it didn't happen for you this time, but you have to keep moving on. That's on the team side. On the more relationship with the government side, like Mark was pointing out, timing is different. The government has their timing on doing things, and corporate has its timing of doing things. So you have to understand that and be ready to weather that storm as well. It is about patience and about having a contingency plan. It got to a point where we were uncertain on the technology and if it was going to happen or not. But when we were at that point, we had already explored the licensing capabilities, a different approach to it, and what kind of other services we could offer the government while we figured it out. So I think that it's all about being proactive as well. Be ready for the problems. I don't think that anyone has a crystal ball and can tell exactly what's going to go wrong, but have some countermeasures right from the get-go. So how can you sustain yourself for the 6 to 8 months that an agreement takes to get signed? If it doesn't get signed, are there alternatives to it? If you weren't doing the program, what would you do to get it done? And again, just challenge your mindsets. It's nothing is the end of the world if you handle it properly. But if you want it to be the end of the world, or you feel like it's going to be the end of the world, then it's going to be the end of the world. So that's my suggestion. Don't think that it's an end-all be-all, and be ready for everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. Eki, a follow-up. This is a question from Michael Bologna. Were there any lessons learned on transitioning technology to the hands of the user? So maybe if you can explain a little bit about what you did to understand the needs of the user, and then how did the actual implementation go? What was different in theory versus reality?
Yes, thanks, Michael. Great question. So to put context into it, Mark's development was working in the lab environment. So it's one of those where we knew that the current could be generated and that it was an actual product that we could somehow touch and feel. So what we learned, for example, on the IoT market, is that the requirements for the systems are not always the same. And they are peaks, their performances, their peak performance periods, there's stability periods, there are some that are dormant and stay like that. So what we learned was for the product, we needed to account for those peaks and valleys somehow. So we paired it with a lithium-ion battery. And that was a development that we came up with. And again, Mark, if you want to comment on that too, on how you approach it from the lab, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road versus when you are just ideating and playing with the science behind it. And I mean, and I could go over the other aspects, but to me, that's the biggest one. So we tell the customers, hey, I can offer you longevity, compact size, and flexibility of design. Are you interested? And they said, yes. Okay, we knew we had something. But then the follow-up was, how does your system work? And that's when the learning really happened, because then we knew, hey, you know, we need it to last for this long. We're okay if it just goes for 5 years. However, if we have these peaks, this is what we need to manage and we need to transmit. And then when we design to that, that's when you create the value and you can build upon the science behind it.
Really helpful. Thanks, Eki. And Mark, if you have any thoughts there also on lessons learned in that process.
Yeah, I think there's also a difference. The customers that I tend to have access to is compared to what Eki has the world of application and use. I have a sort of a narrow blinder set of customers that I need to attend to, and so because he could broaden out and look at some other uses, I think that was a mind-expanding experience for me too, just to be able to step away from that. It's funny, one of the exercises we had over the weekend when we first met was to go out into the street, just start talking to people and asking them, you know, engage in conversation with people and ask them what they wanted, and if there was ever a metaphor for the kinds of things that they had to do, it's like just not being afraid to be rejected and they'll get out of my way, or you know, I don't want to talk to you, but be able to take that step. I didn't spend that. In fact, not only did I not spend a lot of time trying to sell it to all the different customers within the Army or DoD, that really wasn't my interest. I really enjoyed the science more, and so in one sense, this was a great combination of interests to be able to allow me to focus a little more on some of the materials analysis and studies and engage with Eki on the different ways we can use it. So challenges wise, there's one other challenge I wanted to mention. That was the government really in some ways, because of contractual reasons, Eki was mentioning, even just to start a cooperative research agreement together, it took 6 months or so for us to do that. The government in general, and many of the operators in the government, have contractors and are often sort of the opponent. Oh, we have to write a contract that protects us or protects them, or we can't appear as engaging in business together. It's a contract. We have a certain piece of business with them, and so there's a certain mindset. I think Eki and I are still find all of a sudden, oh, this piece of the government doesn't really want us to interact as completely. We're going to have a cooperative research agreement, and you still have to work within those constraints. And so some of that still exists. And so if I had to say there was a challenge, it's that unconscious limitation that we have of, well, you can't help a company become an expert in something because you want to do it. It has to, first of all, be in the best interest of the government, and second of all, be on an equal platform, so you're not giving away information to one particular company over another. And so how these agreements get set up is sometimes very tricky, and depending on which lawyers you're working with, what's the attitude within your organization. So to me, that's a certain challenge I find.
Yeah, and I think that ties nicely to another challenge that startups face, and it's fundraising. So Kaushik asked a question here in the Q&A. For Eki, how do you excite investors in your company as the technology is not developed yet but licensed? So what are you doing to excite investors when you're talking to them? Any advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the technology is developed. We already have IP on top of what Mark has done, and that's ours. On top of that, the creator gives us ownership over whatever we develop on top of what has been already done. So for instance, if I go with Mark and I tell him, hey, Mark, I need it to be a 5-micron layer, and I know that it doesn't work with tritium, so start working with something else. And he comes up with that, and we find like a magic solution for it. We own IP on it. So I mean, again, and the value comes from the sale, right? That's another misconception that a lot of people have. They worry too much about the IP. And while the IP is obviously important, it's more important that you have a good go-to-market strategy, a sales pipeline, and the ability to create and commercialize a product, especially because the IP can be licensed, and it can be licensed exclusively. And of course, in high tech, like what we're doing right now, even these licenses that we have right now and the products that we have, if they are not obsolete within the next couple of years, then we're not doing something right. Because we know that there's a lot of R&D to be done on, the surface of the chips, how can we better deposit the materials on it. All of the manufacturing IP is still up for grabs. We have to design the better manufacturing processes yet. So if you go to an investor and you tell him, hey, I might have a solution that will offer all of the small and CubeSat market the ability to double or triple their mission lifespan. And I'm working with IoT companies that are selling sensing as a service. And I'm giving them batteries that are between $5,000 and $20,000 a pop, and they can actually pay them over 7 years. And we can even recoup the material to redo it. And I can tell you about how my business model works and who my customers are and what's going on. The IP goes second nature because I'm not asking for the riskiest of investments. I'm asking for an investment on an IP that I have developed a whole venture on top. And right now, in terms of funding, we have 3 government contracts. 2 of them are SBIRs, and I don't know if they have touched upon them or not, but they are great for developing IP and getting interactions with real customers within the DoD. The other one is a contract that we won some follow-on work from a hackathon, and that one, the final deliverable, which we will do in February, is a fully functioning prototype of a radioisotopic power source powering a useful sensor. And we actually designed it so that it can power a camera. And maybe I went a little bit long, but I hope that answered the question.
You did. You answered the question very well. And to both of you, you know better than anyone, this is such a unique experience, and the best way to understand it is to hear from people who've gone through it. So Eki, Mark, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights and giving us a little bit of exposure into your experience through the program. I could talk to you for probably another hour, but unfortunately we're nearing time here. So again, if you have more questions for us, please continue talking to us in the pod. Over email as well. If you look at the useful links section in the bottom here, so again, that's on the bottom right. I'll just hop on stage as we wrap up here. In the useful links section, you'll find the application, answers to a lot of the questions that you might be having right now. If you're joining as a potential entrepreneur, someone who is thinking about taking the step, please do it. Let's try it. So the application material and some information about the process, and if you have questions, further thoughts, we're happy to continue that discussion. So head to our website, email us at recruiting@fedtech.io. If you're joining us from the labs and you would like to submit your IP, we're happy to get in touch. Again, that information is in the useful links pod. You can also email us at that same address, recruiting@fedtech.io. If you're not falling into either one of those buckets, you kind of aren't sure what your engagement is, feel free to reach out to us. We'll let you know what makes the most sense. We do have a mentorship model, so you can find out more about that on our website and how you can support some of our teams. Or alternatively, just stay in touch, follow us on our social media channels. As I mentioned, we have a number of events, public pitch events, etc., where you can come see some of these teams in action, and those are open to the public often. So please just follow us on social, on LinkedIn. whatever bucket you fall into, we definitely encourage you to take that next step, whatever that looks like for you. And we're here to help you figure out what that is. So stay in touch with us, recruiting@fedtech.io. You've seen our website now a million times, and it's in the links. Before we wrap up here, a really big thank you to our partners at DHS, S&T, to Bob Burns for your wonderful remarks today that really set the stage, Megan Mull, Kalpana Reddy, John Ryan, Jenny Peters, many more, to Dave Copps and Jennifer Ortakales Dawkins. Really enjoyed and appreciated your conversation. We know these things stick somewhere in our brain, so thank you so much for sharing that energy and insight with us. Eki and Mark, of course, fantastic hearing from you both. And we know that your experience is likely going to inspire someone in the next cohort, someone probably on this call. So thank you all for being here. And the biggest thanks goes to all of you for attending, taking the time today. It's been a great hour and a half. Please stay in touch with us, ask us any questions you have, and have a great afternoon. Take care.